Wherever you are, welcome to Let's Talk with Pastor Ngwaru Shaw. On this show, we address issues of marriage, issues of family. We touch life in general, health, spirituality, and religion. And tonight, we have a very touching topic, a sensitive topic. And I would like to believe that we will all have the courage to go through this particular topic. We are basically looking at the future of your family when you are gone. The future of your family when you are gone. What challenges do you foresee happening? Peradventure, death claims you and the family remains alone. And by the way, I would like you to know that we are not only talking of husbands, neither are we only talking of wives or parents or children. We are talking of family members. When one family member goes, what are the complications? What are the challenges that goes on in a family? I have a group of experts who are going to be addressing this particular topic. And remember, friends, as usual, we provide you with 30 minutes of asking questions, making comments, and we'll be able to address that. We may not have a chance to address every comment, but we will try by all means to make sure that all the questions have been answered. And to help me go through our discussion tonight, I have Dr. Sambo, I've got Dr. Bonya, I've got Mrs. Ruthi Nyawasha, I've got Advocate Boisimu Kize. I just want, it's tradition and culture on this broadcast to allow our panelists to kind of share with us their academic credentials, professional career, what are they doing in life, so that we can appreciate their contribution. I'd like to start with Dr. Sambo. With Dr. Sambo, maybe in just 1 minute and not more. Who are you, and what have you done in school? What are you doing as a career? I would appreciate if you can give us that in a very short time, please. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, viewers. As our speaker said, I am Julian Sambo. I am a social worker by profession, and I'm currently working at the University of Pretoria. I've done research. I work with women a lot, women and children, to empower women and to empower children, families. So my research basically focused on human trafficking. If you want to know more about human trafficking, you can come to me. I worship at Littleton Church in Pretoria, and I'm also a community ministries and special needs coordinator at church. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Dr. Sambo, there, when you say you worship at Littleton Church, I've seen so many buildings that look like church in Littleton. Where do you worship?
I worship at Littleton Church, and Littleton Church is in Littleton, which is Littleton is in Pretoria, close to Centurion.
Is it an Anglican church? Is it an Adventist church? What church is that?
Okay, it's an NG church. We rent there. So it's not our building, but they give us a place to worship there.
Okay, basically you are Adventist. I appreciate that. No, thanks a lot. Dr. Bonya, I know you from years back before you were a doctor and what have you. And now I'm glad to introduce you as Dr. Bonya. Who is Dr. Bonya?
Yes, my name is Hobson Bonya. At the moment, I live in Pretoria, in Pierre van Ryneveld. That's where I'm actually located, close to Irene. I work for the Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division of the Seventh Adventists, and I'm one of the 2 vice presidents. So, but basically, I'm a preacher. I'm a pastor by training, ordained to the ministry, and my terminal degree is in leadership. That's applied theology. So I'm a theologian. I'm a preacher.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. And then Advocate Mukize, your screen it keeps dancing. I don't know how we can make it stable. We appreciate that. And if there was a way of getting a bit of light in your room, but anyway, it's too late to change some of those things. You can remain as you are. It's okay. Ruthie Nyawasha, I know you from when you were a girl, then you became a lady, then a woman, and yeah, who is Ruthie?
Good evening, viewers. I'm Ruth Nawasha. I live in Rayton, and I'm qualified as a business administrator and a community developer. I'm currently working at Southern Africa Indian Ocean Division as a risk controller coordinator and retirement coordinator. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Our viewers out there, you can see that we try by all means to bring people that have something they can offer to you. My last and not the least panelist here is Advocate Mkize, and Advocate Mkize is coming again for the second time to the program. We are happy to have you. Advocate, in a nutshell, who is Advocate Mkize?
Thank you very much, Pastor Ngwaru. Greetings to my fellow panelists and to the viewers at home. I live in Pretoria, in Boardwalk. I am a qualified legal practitioner, admitted advocate of the High Court. I've done degrees in law and both junior and postgrad. And business, and specializing in labor and contract law. And I'm basically running my own practice in forensics. I'm also a certified fraud examiner, dealing with forensic investigations and examinations, but also practicing law and doing strategy and support for organizations. So that's me. And thank you for having me as part of the panel again.
We appreciate that, Advocate Mkize. Now, should I commit a crime? Am I covered?
It depends what crime you commit.
Anyway, our panelists, I'm happy and thank you for the self-introductions that you have done, and I'm sure our viewers are waiting to have an engagement with all of us here. Let me also say to our viewers out there, we are discussing a very sensitive issue, the issue of death. And if you think that you are of a nervous disposition, and this may be a trigger moment to you, and we don't want to complicate your life, but if you are strong and you are happy to go through the discussion, we would greatly appreciate. But we want you to know that if you think this will kind of affect you, you are at liberty. You may have to watch a delayed match. It's okay. But for others, they've healed. They are going forward. And you may be here to help those that have not yet lost a husband, those that have not lost a wife or a child, to understand exactly what goes on into this. So if you remain with us, you'll be a very strong asset. And therefore, we want you to send questions and to make comments that will be of great help to us. Now, my dear panelists, let's get this car moving. And the first question that I have is talking about death. Talking about death, and I'm sure you guys also follow my YouTube channel every Thursday. I have not gotten to a point where I have warned the people to say, if you are not comfortable, you are free to kind of pull away from watching and whatever, as I am doing tonight because of the sensitivity that people are attached to death. Do families freely talk about death, planning about death? Is this a taboo? What are the cultural issues that have to do with talking about death before any one of us is dead? I don't know. Advocate Mkize there. What do you think? In South Africa, do South African families talk about death?
In South Africa, particularly in the African, Black African context and socio-cultural setting, talking about the subject of death is in fact frowned upon. It is regarded as a taboo. In fact, there are even beliefs that if you talk about death, you are actually inviting death into your own space. And therefore, when you start brokering the subject, people will look at you in a very queer and strange way. And they will think that there's something that has possessed you. So it's a subject that people don't want to talk about. It's a subject that people, in fact, there are even beliefs that if you start talking about the issue of death, it simply sets a bad omen. And people also have got beliefs that once they talk about arrangements of what happens to the assets, etc., they are precipitating their own death in that if they don't die through some bad omen, those that are actually standing in line to benefit might actually, in fact, hasten their demise. And therefore, it's not a subject that people easily talk about. In fact, people shun the subject of death. They would rather not talk about it.
Hey, that's quite something. Now, there you are, Dr. Bonya. Suppose a wife initiates this whole discussion of death, and we need to be prepared as a family. You know, this is something that happens in life. We need to talk about this, and then the family gets to talk about it. And then the following week, there's an accident and the husband is gone. What do Africans think about such a thing? Or what do Asians think about? We spoke about this and now look, there's a death in the family. Like, let's bring it from what Advocate Mkhize is saying over there.
No, in fact, Pastor Ngwaru, in Africa, in the African setting, normally every bad thing that happens has an explanation.
Yes.
Even if there is no book about it, but for some reason, people still make connections. And they say, we told you. I'll just give an example. In my own context, in my own experience, when an owl, OWL, sits on the roof of your house and begins making noise, all the time you think that animal, that bird is talking about death. It's actually announcing a bad omen. So in Africa, talking about death is so remote. We are not free most of the times. And even when parents say, my children, I'm going to die. Children are still very uncomfortable to talk about death. Their parents, it's very difficult sometimes.
Yes. Now let's hear the two ladies there. Any one of you, maybe not both of you, but anyone who has an experience, maybe you have seen it in the community and what have you. Now that you are a woman, are women courageous to initiate such a discussion in a family?
I think it's the same as Pastor Bonya put it. It's not an easy topic to talk about. It's not. And you cannot even initiate it because now, if it happens, then the husband will say, the relative will say, it's you, which is the husband. Especially if they know that you were asking. They would think that you have an agenda. Even if you want to ask, to say, okay, have you prepared for the children? So we just live. Life is normal. I think we're going to live forever. We don't talk about death. And also, as Pastor Bonya says, I think also sometimes death is associated with witchcraft. People don't just die in Africa. There must be someone who has...
who is actually... Yes. All right. Maybe let me go to Ruthie over there. Is now that it's a taboo and there's a lot of suspicion that goes with, why are we talking about this? Why are you bringing this topic in the family? And the people then begin to generate some fears, and suppose something happens and people are being blamed and there are fights at the end of the day between the in-laws and what have you. Are we then safe not talking about death? Is it okay then? Are we maintain the comfort zone don't talk about dying, don't talk about death, because if you talk about it, you are inviting it, or you. What should we do?
We should talk about death, because if we don't talk about death, we are not going to be able to plan for tomorrow. And we've seen families that have really suffered because things were not in order, things were not placed in order. Therefore, it affects those that have remained behind. So we should talk about death. No matter how painful it is and how uncomfortable it is, it's something that needs to be discussed.
That's serious. I remember going to for checkup. You go through scans, and the doctors discover what they discover, and there comes a time when you can't hold back, but you need to sit down as a family and say, "Look, we need to talk about this and whatever." Advocate Mukize, what are the advantages of not discussing death? Now that it's fierce to talk about it, what are the advantages of not talking? Are there advantages at all? What do families benefit by not talking about death?
In fact, I just want to say that if you don't talk about death, death will talk about you. Because what you have failed to deal with whilst you are still alive, it will force those that remain to have to deal with it. And therefore, it is a subject that is inevitable. It is a subject that we all have to confront. There is no advantage whatsoever in not talking about death. In fact, there are disadvantages to not talking about it. In the Bible, we get a story of that woman whose husband passed away. And having passed away, the husband was, in fact, a man who had not planned properly, and therefore the poor woman was plunged into serious debt. And it appears from that story that there hadn't been any prep about the husband dying. Neither were there any preparations, just in terms of how life would then proceed post his demise. And we see the situation where her sons are being threatened with being taken over because the husband was owing a lot of money. So in essence, there are no advantages to not talking about death. What in fact we ought to do is to make sure, excuse me for my camera, the situation here is a bit not that friendly.
You can go ahead and talk while we understand.
Yes, but essentially what I'm saying is that there are more advantages to talking about death, because then you know exactly how to deal with certain things in terms of assets that remain, in terms of how to manage the debts, etc., and all of those kind of issues. In fact, one of the things that happens is that sometimes people that have got wealth and riches that has been left for them never get to know about it. Because there's been no discussion about it, and those things get forfeited to the state. The children go hungry, the wife suffers, the spouse suffers, whereas in fact there is a check waiting for someone to come and claim and have life going smoothly. So there are no advantages.
Okay, I hear you, Dr. Sampo there. Advocate Mkize is talking about assets, he's talking about material things, check that you can go and pick and what have you. What about the emotional, the psychosocial challenges? What are the implications that come with the death as far as that area is concerned? I know in this program we are not only talking about money, although we need to talk about that. What about in your area? You deal with women, you deal with children, and I am sure they are the mostly affected when death creeps in. What are some of the emotional, psychological challenges that people go through? And is there a way of limiting the impact on their emotionality by discussing death earlier before it even comes?
I think, Pastor Ngwan, you have answered the question already, because you have said it is important to talk about that. It is important that we know, and as advocates, it's very important that families should talk what they have. In case of someone dies, we don't want someone dies and then someone is remaining to take care of the responsibilities of the person who died. So there are a lot of implications emotionally and physically, and also socially. You know, socially, we know in African setting already, if you haven't put your things in order, there are chances that there will be like grabbing. We know in-laws will come and take the things from the woman, and the children will remain with nothing because the spouse did not prepare for the future or not. So, you know, there are so many. There's anger, there emotionally, you know, you don't want to forgive.
You need to speak close to your mic, Dr. Sambo. Remain facing your mic.
And I'm saying that, you know, sometimes you become angry for the person who has died because they did not put things in place to prepare for you. So it's very important that we talk about these issues so that no one remains unknowing. You don't even know where to go, especially women. When it happens, we don't even know even the office of the husband. So it's a very big challenge which we are experiencing. So it puts women in a very tight corner. Children who are vulnerable, they fail to go to school while the father was somebody who was doing very well. So people should stop. We should talk. We should be open to each other.
Okay, no, I hear that. Ruthie and Dr. Bonya there, we are all community people. We are workmates and we are schoolmates and the like. We are churchmates and what have you. We have seen people's lives being ravaged by death. How have you seen death complicating people's lives that were seemingly doing very well? And the moment one family member goes and you find that the family is in disarray, what have you seen? How have people been ravaged by death? Ruth, you want to start?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I've seen that, like from the claims that I've processed before. Survivors back in my line of work, I've noticed that sometimes after the death of the breadwinner, you will notice that automatically maybe the children won't be able to go to school. And they'll be phoning and asking how far the claim is, and actually stating that the children are not going to school.
Yes.
So that alone is a problem. And you also notice that they will get into debt as soon as the person dies because there were no maybe funeral policies.
Yes.
So immediately after death, they actually enter into debt. By the time the amount is paid out, the beneficiaries are paid out.
Yes.
The money is going straight to pay for the debts. So it really affects the society. So it's good to talk about it so that you can put things in order.
So you are telling me, while you are still alive, you did not make a plan to mitigate any challenges that have to do with you departing prematurely. And as you go, you even make it worse by creating a debt because your funeral is going to cost a lot of money. And the family members are going to hand for money. And when they get the little benefit they get from the employer is to pay the debtors. I'm sure, I think that should be painful. Pastor Bonya, complications that come with not plan for death, and death simply comes. We have not talked about things you don't even know where your husband banks money or where your wife banks things and what have you.
I am Dr. Pastor Ngwaru. I think there is a lot that goes into preparation or talking about death.
Yes.
Sometimes we've talked about estate planning.
Yes.
Estate planning is not because you really have many things, but you
Yes.
have you have children that you need to talk. You need to prepare for death. It's not
Yes.
only about your death; it's about death
Yes.
of anyone in the family. I'll give another
Yes.
example. For instance, you find that in the family, probably it's only the husband who is working.
Yes.
He is working and he keeps all the money, he keeps all the bank accounts whatsoever. And
Yes.
sometimes he spends everything, there are no savings whatsoever. Maybe they're
Yes.
living in a house that is rented.
Yes.
They live maybe in Rayton, maybe in Centurion, maybe they live in Pretoria North whatsoever.
Yeah.
When death strikes, the reality has happened. You discover that only the husband knew where things were. The wife is not working, and they may afford maybe rentals for 1 month or 2 months. People have been booted out. They have been sent out of their homes, which they called home for a long time. And children begin to wonder that, oh, our father cheated us. They feel that they've been cheated for some reason. It's not only the father, but even the mothers. Maybe they have maybe there is no male figure in the family, but they're working. And when the father dies, because also mothers can die. Not only fathers die, mothers also can die. So it's important for whatever the father can do, the mother also needs to do the same to prepare for people. Not only about talking about death, but at the same time to put things in order, talking about estate planning. You've got homes, you've got houses, you've got properties. Talk about those kinds of things.
Yes. Let me go back to the social scientist there, Dr. Sample over there. Do people really think they are going to die? As people drive to work every day, as we fly to London, as we go to the mall, do people live with the idea that I will die, or they think it's others who are going to die minus themselves? How do people think about it? Maybe this will also help us in terms of why people are not talking about death, because to them they are not going to die. Or what do you think?
In most cases, people don't think they are going to die. You are not, because you are not planning for your death. What I'm planning, like if you ask me now, I will say, I'm planning. I want to be promoted. I want to become a professor. I want to be, all those things. I'm not saying when I die, I'm not talking about that. But it's very important that we are talking about this topic, because even the Bible itself, in Psalms 90, verse 12, it asks us, David asked, teach me how to number my days.
My days.
The Bible can say that we should number our days. Therefore, we are not here permanent. We are not here permanent. There will be a time when we're not going to be here. Now, what is it that we put in place when we are not here, when we leave this place? That's what I think we are discussing tonight, and we are going to share so that we help each other.
Now, let me shock you, ladies and gentlemen, out of your skins. My grandmothers, both maternal and paternal, they lived beyond 105, 100 years. And then after that, you notice that all my uncles and my father, nobody went beyond 85 years of age and what have you. I'm talking, you are saying number your days. The Ngwarus, we hardly go beyond 85 and whatever. Should this statistic inform me, or I'll be like my grandmother, I'll get to 105? Dr. Mkize. Now I'm very public about the Ngwarus. We hardly go beyond 85. And what should that speak anything to me?
Well, I mean, the issue of death, I mean, is not an age issue, as you would be aware. I mean, children die.
I'm happy to hear that.
Young people die. I mean, we've had some tragedies in our own church. Young men below 20, crashed into a tree, passed away tragically, There are accidents that happen on the roads. There are, things that just happen, and life gets to be terminated. There's an executive director, deputy executive director of City Press. Last week he was buried at age 44, heart attack, one time, gone. You know, so these kind of things happen. They are no longer premised on the age, etc., and all of those things. You may be perfectly healthy. You may have a long lifespan, you know, in terms of your genes and DNA, etc., and all of those things. But there are things that happen in life, and that curtail life unexpectedly. And this is why then even, you know, the issue of the second coming of Jesus Christ and the imminence thereof is not so much in terms of the time of the future. It is the time that you still have, that you have remaining, you know, on earth. And therefore the preparation for the second coming is a preparation that happens every day and every second. Why? Because you can demise, you know, just in a split second. So it's not about age, it's about us preparing now for the inevitable, because we're still wearing bodies that are corruptible. And so prepare now rather than later.
No, you couldn't have said it any better. As a district pastor in Harare, and Chitungwiza there, you know, we had young husbands, men, 20 years of 20 years something, 25, 26, fine. The guy goes to work, and the next thing we have a funeral in the evening, and what have you. So I really understand. It's not a question of looking at 85 years. I may not even get there myself.
Yeah.
My uncles did, but I may not get there. I think we need to run away from the fallacy of it's others who are going to die, and you continue to go to the mall, you continue to have Christmas and birthdays and whatever. Death is a stranger who comes, it's an enemy who comes uninvited. I want to buttress that. But then Sister Ruthie or Ruthie Nyawasha over there, somebody, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. Somebody is driving their car. I remember the other time, was it late last year or sometime last year? Somebody was caught in N1 doing 300 kilometers per hour in N1. And should you collide or lose control and you die on the spot, is it because your time with God is up and this is the boundary you could not cross, and God had to make sure? Is there anything that can be done to manage the risk of dying and even avert it, prevent it, or maybe delay it? Or death is a must that is meant to happen?
Yes, God has foreknowledge that He does not predestine anyone to die in a certain way. There are risks in our lives that can be avoided.
Yes.
As you are mentioning the example of that one that was driving very fast.
Yes.
Let's take the context of South Africa and neighboring countries.
Yes.
There are 5 highest causes of death. We've got road traffic accidents as the number one. Yes, because of our roads, our dirty roads, and our speeding, driving under influence.
Yes.
And the road vehicles, the issue of seat belts even, and overloading.
Yes.
Even unfavorable conditions whereby people drive at night and it's raining.
Yes.
You will also notice that in some insurance companies,
yes,
if you're involved in an accident and you tell them that you had a seat belt,
yeah,
they'll actually pay you. The payout will actually be more to incentivize you to make sure that everyone is trying by all means to control their risk.
Yeah.
Let's take, for an example, also crime.
Yeah.
It's good to know and to be diligent, to be aware of your surroundings.
Yes.
That you know what is happening. Like right now, we've got issues of ladies that are being kidnapped and disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's prudent not to be traveling at night or in isolation or places that are risky.
Yes.
Those are the things that we can try and avoid. The other thing that I can also mention on the top 5 is lifestyle diseases.
Mm-hmm.
With communicable diseases like COVID and HIV.
Yes.
And we see there are a lot of risk control measures that are being taken right now. Masks, sanitizing, washing our hands, all those are control measures that can be put in place to prevent the death. Then non-communicable diseases like a high blood pressure,
Yes.
diabetes, they can also be avoided. Other people will say it's hereditary.
Yes.
So I can avoid it. But we know that if you exercise, if you eat healthy, it can also help in that. When we've got mental illness, maybe Dr. Sam will elaborate on that. But we've got depression and anxiety going around because of the situation that we are living in.
Yes.
Uncertainties in life, thereby it causes suicide, a lot of suicide. We've got gender-based violence. So there are a lot of things that can be done that can minimize or remove risk.
Yeah, let me also touch you while you are still on removing a risk. I would like my viewers, our viewers out there to know, if I had not been doing what we call annual medical assessments, which are mandatory at our workplace, I would have died in 2019. This one is evident. Right now, you would not be having this broadcast with me. I would be gone. I would have died in 2019 if I was not following medical assessments and making sure I'm checked on. Ruth, how important is it for the family to make sure, outside of making sure we avoid traffic accidents and we also avoid being caught in crime and people murder us and whatever, how important is it to the family to know my heart is still okay, my lungs are still okay? In just 1 second, how important is that? To me, it saved my life.
It is very important because you can only deal with a problem that you have identified, that you are aware of.
Yes.
And whilst you are sitting in your house, you might not know. We've heard a lot of people that will go for checkups and they are told that they are on stage 4 cancer.
Yes.
And within a short time, they are gone. So it's good to have annual checkups if you can afford them, especially the killer diseases, the terminal diseases, so that you can tackle the problem early enough.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ruth, over there. Now, to my 3 other panelists there, let's suppose a family, after this broadcast, are now confident to say, yeah, we need to sit down and talk about this thing called death. And we need to know where everything is. We need to discuss all the dynamics, all the implications. What are some of the critical preparation towards death that a family can put on the table? Maybe Dr. Bonya, from your career, your work responsibility, I know you deal with some of. What are some of the must discussed issues that you cannot leave out?
Okay, I'll give a few of them. For instance, one of them is make provision.
Yes.
For the children. Yes. Or dependence. Provision for the children and protect your dependents. Yes. Your dependents could be your mom, your dad, and your sisters, or whoever are dependent upon you. Because they're part of your household for some reason, whether they live here or they live there, but they're part of them. So make provision for them. One thing also that is very important to avoid their situation where people come to grab anything for everything. You need to appoint a guardian. For instance, you can say, in case I'm gone, who is going to speak for me you need to leave somebody behind you who can speak your mind.
Yes.
And entrust him with that responsibility, or entrust her with that responsibility. You appoint him, you appoint her. In case I'm gone, please.
Pastor, you are saying a mouthful there. I don't want to miss the point. I'm sure this is a message that can be directed squarely on husbands.
Right.
Am I exaggerating? I don't know. Because who is going to defend your wife when you are gone? I seem to hear, Pastor Ngwaru, before you are gone, Elizabeth, much as she may stand for herself and face the challenges, but it's always nice to have somebody who will speak for her when she's in tears, and who will defend her when she's. Pastor, that is a mouthful. I appreciate that one.
Yes. And some people, for example, some people have said, I'm going to ask my firstborn son, to take care of my properties.
Yes.
And you don't just speak by word of mouth. You put it on a piece of paper, because uncles and aunties can come and challenge him and say, you don't count here. So it's important to appoint someone, but besides talking by word of mouth, it's important to make sure that there's a legal finger there, a legal print there, to show that that thing
is in writing.
It's important.
That document, is it what we call a will or what?
That, it comes under the will, or talking about the trust. But also the last thing, Pastor Ngwaru, that I would like to mention before we go further, is that you need to think about your legacy.
Yes.
Making a gift. You have lived in this life. You have not lived for yourself.
Yes.
You have got the church. You have got the family. You have got other people. You have got people who surround you. Leave a legacy behind and try to make a gift. You can still make a gift while you're gone. Your gift will still do something from him after you're gone already. And you will still leave your image, your picture, your print of yourself behind. And you'll still be active when you're gone. It's possible to do that.
That is powerful. Maybe we'll end with Dr. Sambo. Advocate, any meaningful must discuss issue that must be put on the materially, that honey, before you are gone, or my children, before you go, or mama, before you die, let's talk about this. What are some of the must discuss issues?
You know, Pastor Ngwaru, I mean, and to our viewers, one of the things that death causes when there has been no planning for it is death. So death can actually lead to more deaths.
Okay.
And in the African context, you find this where people actually get killed because there is contestation about who is supposed to inherit what, who is supposed to acquire what, etc., and all of those kind of things. And the conflicts can be so rife and so intense and fierce that it could actually lead to more deaths. So that's one thing. If you've been ambiguous and been careless and reckless about putting your things orderly, etc., it can create difficulties.
Yes.
I know, on a second instance, of families where a person could not be buried for months because then issues emerged that there was a small house and there was a big house. You know what I'm talking about. And the small house claimed, no, I'm going to bury this one. And the big house said, well, I'm going to bury this one. The matter ended up in court. And there were serious and fierce contestations, etc. Now, if that husband had actually left clear instructions in terms of what happens when I demise, there wouldn't have been an issue. I mean, it's just like, a situation where there is now a contestation. Your parents, for example, might say, we want our son to be buried in Zimbabwe. And the wife might say, no, she's here, he's here, we live here, we're in South Africa, etc. We bury her. So just a small issue as where will this person be buried can become a big issue that might even involve court actions, etc., and all of those things. So you discuss all of those things. The other aspect, which is very important, is what then happens with regards to the assets that I leave. Because more often than not, that becomes a source of big stress and a source of big, I mean, people may have very little, and the stress that they might have is actually the fact that that person was a breadwinner who basically sustained them from, day to day. But the other big stresses could actually be there's too much money that has been left behind. And therefore, because there's too much money that has been left behind and assets that are all over the shore, even offshore, then that creates a serious issue of contestation. Who inherits this, etc. So you need to make arrangements that are clear. But the last aspect I want to deal with is the aspect that then there are issues that emerge post the death. And those issues could include, for example, a discovery that there is a little brother, there is a little sister who basically who appears at funeral time or who appears on the deathbed and says, I've come to see my dad or whatever, that kind of thing. Now, those kind of things also hold back a number of issues in terms of saying, how do we deal with this aspect? Because now, previously, the law in South Africa, for example, those children that were born out of wedlock did not get any entitlement to any inheritance. The law has since changed. And therefore, the courts now say, even those children, if DNA says, this is Pastor Ngwaru's child, this is Mkiza's child, that child is by law entitled to inherit. And therefore, that then creates another issue. I mean, I know of a family that I was assisting, which basically had a similar issue. 5 other children emerged, and there was contestation. To this point, the matter has still not been resolved because it is going through the master of the High Court, etc. The husband is demised about 7-8 years ago.
Now, let me hear from Ruth and Dr. Sambo. Dr. Sambo, I'm still waiting for your point, but I want to just make a follow-up question from what advocate is saying there. Should you suppose I worked in Botswana, I also worked in Bulawayo for many years, I worked in Swaziland, now I'm here in South Africa, I travel a lot, and I produce babies out there, and I get to know I have 2-3 babies in each of the countries that I worked. And now, here is Elizabeth. We want to talk about death. Do I disclose that I've got children somewhere?
Yes, you must. It's for me, isn't it?
Yeah, for you.
Yes, you must disclose. But what I've also noticed as I have processed some of the claims, because the beneficiary form in my setup of work, the beneficiary form can be written and signed by the owner and not shown to anyone else.
Yes.
It's a private document. So I've actually picked whereby you will notice that there is a child who's got a different surname, and it's actually son or daughter.
Yes.
And the wife might not know about it because they have not seen the beneficiary form.
Yes.
But it's good that the children are also written down so that they benefit equally. So it depends on the relationship as far as the family is concerned, whether discussing it will be okay or not. But at the end of the day, it will not be fair for someone not to be able to go to school because they were not written down, because the wife was beneficiary. Yes.
So that's fine. No, appreciate that. Dr. Sambo, there we now want to go to our viewers and hear what questions they have. From where you are standing, I know you are coming from psychology, from sociology, and whatever. Does being a Christian, you have lived your whole life as a Christian, is it a good preparation for death? Does it kind of reduce the impact of death? Is it part of the preparation? We're talking of spirituality here. Does spirituality help in any way?
Pastor Ngwaru, but you know, from what the colleagues here have shared about the small houses and discovering things which you didn't know, prolongs your living process. You know, it takes long. You know, now you discover that this person, I think, didn't love me. I think he was cheating, and sometimes we even question God to say, but God, you should have known better, or maybe you should have given me a clue to know. So yes, for those ones who worship and who trust in God, you need to draw your energy from God Himself, because otherwise you will end up going into depression. You end up having so many diseases which Sister Nyawasha has talked about, like high blood pressure, and you can die early, like the advocate said, that you know death can also create death. We have seen people die because now they've discovered issues. So Christianity helps. Yes, you draw energy from God Himself and let Him guide you.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'll have follow-up questions on every one of you, but for now, let's go to our questions. If our IT department can throw in a question. We have there Palesa, who is saying, what about the cost of preparing for death? What institutions are freely available for advice besides the big banks? Ruthie, you are from the financial sector there. I don't know if you're able to answer that question, or Pastor Bonya, or any one of you. Let's have Palesa, please.
Okay, can I come in, Pastor Ngwaru?
Yeah, please do.
Yes, I'm aware of the fact that the banks, the big banks, can also help one prepare for death in terms of making wills, depositing wills, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I know also for those, there are some church or religious institutions. For instance, the Seventh Adventist Church.
Yes.
Globally, in most of the regional offices, like the regional office where I'm serving right now, where I'm working, the Southern Africa Indian Relation Division, we've got a department that is called Planned Giving and the Trust Services. And one of the things is to facilitate, to help people do prepare their wills. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to pay anything, just to come. And when you do that, we are not legal practitioners at the moment, but we've got our conferences, our unions. We cannot make referrals, but we've got the tools, the instruments that can actually help you organize your items, and you don't have to pay a thing at all. It's free service to whoever wants to be assisted. So besides the big banks, the church, especially the Seventh Adventist Church, that's what I know, that we've got that facility at the moment.
Now tell me, if I am Roman Catholic, I'm Pentecostal, or maybe I'm just a mere community member, I don't go to church, and I get to hear that besides the big banks, the Seventh-day Adventist Church offices, you can go there and get assistance. Is this open to non-Adventists?
It would be open, but I'll still make a little condition here.
Yeah.
When we talk about, when you're working with the church, for instance, somebody says that I'm going to make a will, but most of the times it has to do with things like, I want this so much percentage to go to my child. I want this one to go here. I want this one to go here. But also because I've been a member of this church, I want 1% to go towards the preaching of the gospel.
Yes.
And that's why the church comes in. They become not necessarily interested, but they're saying we're going to facilitate. But even outside, we have seen people who are non-Christians who have donated their resources. They've used the church to advance their cause whatsoever. So I don't see anything that will stop us offering services to those who need help.
When I was in Flower, I remember we had someone, a non-Adventist businessman, who came forward to our administrative offices and said, I feel I need to return something to God. I want to appreciate for the life I'm living, for the health I'm enjoying. Can you guys take this offering? I don't go to church, but I just want to say thank you, God. Can people do that?
Yes, please. They can do that all the time, and they're welcome. They can donate their property, they can donate their land, they can donate their monies, whatever is available, just to advance God's work. They can donate towards programs like TV programs that preach Jesus Christ or things like that. So it's okay. It's okay to do that. We have received help from anywhere, and it's protected, and there's no problem with that.
Very good. Let's go to Christopher there. And Christopher is saying, is it necessary for a Christian father to do paternity test to establish whether his children are his before preparing a will? Christopher, you must go for the test. What do you think? What do you think? Advocate, maybe that's your area. You and Dr. Somebody, please come in.
Well, that's a very interesting.
I want to write a will, and I must check all these kids of mine to make sure they are my children. What are you saying about that?
Well, there is no legal prohibition to that. It seems that Christopher would rather walk by sight and not by faith.
Not by faith.
And therefore, I mean, it's something that can be done. However, I mean, when you look at it from the context of what it does to the issue of a trust relationship between the spouses, that might, in fact, cause that dent in terms of the trust relationship, and it's something that you may not come out of, in a better shape. However, it's something that you is within your right. I mean, we've seen these things happen even with children that emerge after the marriage, and there are issues of DNA tests that have to be conducted and all of that. So it's things that happen just to ascertain that those that you want to leave your inheritance to are in fact your children.
Beautiful. Right, let's find out. Well, another question is coming over there. Let me ask Ruth, you are the youngest of us here. If Abisha dies today, are you going to, is remarriage part of your plan? No, this is just a rhetorical question. Don't answer this. I just want to...
No, I understand it's a rhetorical question. I'm not answering.
Please don't shock Abisha. Otherwise, you find he collapses. But does it make sense to? I know of a workmate somewhere, I'll not mention the country, and we go to work together for the first time, and then go to learn that for 9 years, the guy had lost his wife 9 years, and then I said, "What about remarriage?" And then he says, "No, the plan that me and my deceased wife is we are going to meet at the resurrection. And so whoever dies first, the surviving spouse does not marry." This does it complicate Christian life and social needs and what have you? While we are thinking of that, please let's answer that question, because a lot of people today want to marry, but they still have a commitment to their husband who died or the wife who died, and they feel like, I will not be faithful should I marry again. Or the children will say, "Mom, we are not going to have another dad here. We're not going to have another father." Or they may say, "We don't want another woman. We don't want another mother here." How should we deal with that? But before that, let's go to Nathaniel. How frequent should one write a will? Should those inheriting know details, and to those who inherit know the details of the will before or after death is obtained in terms of asset, credit, etc.? Should children know or only find out after death? I'm not a very good reader, but I'm sure you got the essence. When I have written a will, should beneficiary know, or they have to wait until I'm dead? Those of you, I'm sure, Dr. Mkize and Dr. Bonya, the advocate Mkize, and Dr. Bonya. I'm sure this falls in your line, and maybe partly Ruth there you can assist. In less than a minute, what are you saying?
All right. I'll say this, Pastor Ngwaru.
Yes.
A will, it is a will because you don't share with anyone else. It is a will, it is your desire.
Yes.
You decide, it's your desire. Now, in terms of updating the will,
yeah,
because needs change, circumstances change.
Yes.
You can always go back to your will and refine it, tune it according to that time. Because if you keep a will that was written maybe 35 years ago, it may not stand the test of time right now. So it's important for you to know what are the contents of the will and keep on updating it. It's very, very important. But however, in my context, not because I've read somewhere, someplace, if I've got children who are grown up and they're responsible and I've done the best, I've done the best for them, I will not keep everything to my heart so that they're surprised at a later date. A will is a will, but in terms of my relationship, in terms of my investments, whatever I have, I don't have to hold those kinds of things to my heart. I would rather entrust them with whatever is available because they're responsible. It does not make much sense really to keep everything to your heart and hope that they're going to make sense at that time. I think on my own personal understanding, I would rather do the best with my children right now, with my family right now. Don't withhold information. Give it to them. But when it comes to the will, you keep it, you deposit it, and you keep on updating it as time allows.
Okay. No, thanks, Doctor. I really appreciate that. And Advocate Mkize, we have something here from Elizabeth. If a couple was married in a community of property, where the property belongs to the two of them, is there any need to make a will? And while you are also answering that question, there's a follow-up question that I wanted to ask. So let me appendage it to this one. And that is, we are in a community of property. It's 50-50 in terms of assets. And then Elizabeth dies or I die. Who takes my 50%? Is it falling back to Elizabeth? Or my parents can come and say, your marriage is now ended. You take your 50%, the other 50% as the relatives we are now taking. What does the law say? Now let us answer Elizabeth plus that bit that I've added there.
Okay, thank you, Pastor, for that question, and thanks to ma'am. Perhaps let me start with this issue of who do you share this thing with. I would advise that at least someone in your household should know where to go to in case of your death. So, for example, you may not necessarily say, well, there is 10 million rand that is waiting for you or whatever, etc. But someone should know, in case I demise, this is the person that holds the details of what's happening with regards to the issues. So that could be your bank manager, that could be your financial advisor, etc., etc., etc. So that they know where to go in case of a demise. So I just wanted to go past that. The second aspect, of course, is that, and it links to the question around in community of property. You are in community of property, you are spouses. And because of that, you actually share everything around the assets, around the wealth, around the decisions, and you share everything, including debts and liabilities, jointly and severally. And that simply means that if Ngwaru is sequestrated because he's in debt, the wife is automatically also sequestrated because they also part to the assets, to the joint assets and the liabilities that obtain. That's why some families, in fact, opt to go to out of community of property to try and protect and preserve those kind of things. Now, back to the question around the issue of in community of property. Yes, there will still be a need to actually have a will, because the will does not just deal with the issue of the 50-50. There may be issues of there are issues of children, as an example, which you need to deal with in terms of the distribution. Pastor Ngwaru raises the issue of the extended family, that perhaps might have expectations in terms of the claim. So there is a protection to the surviving spouse against those that might actually come in and say, no, but this is our brother who has passed away, and therefore we've got a claim to these kind of things. It basically retains that particular authority with regards to the aspect. The surviving spouse automatically takes the 50% of the spouse that has actually demised in the community of property kind of patrimonial relationship, and that's what generally would happen. So I would still say that the will is important, even in the circumstances of in community of property.
Okay, that's fine. There was a question that was asked earlier on. It was posted there from Tembi Tebe. They're talking of it's back. How does the type of marriage affect planning of death, and what happens to those that remain? I don't know whether you charged it earlier on. You could maybe in a nutshell tell us the type of marriage, and we can also further clarify what we mean by community of property and all those things, so that others who don't have that vocabulary can appreciate what we're talking about. We want everyone on the show to understand type of marriage and death planning.
Yes, well, I mean, there are different types of forms of marriage. So you'd have marriage in community of property, which is the most common. And that simply means that everything that I bring into the marriage, whether historically that I brought before, I mean, we got married, and the stuff that we accumulate, it belongs to both of us jointly. So it's basically 50-50. Even the debts that we incur, or that are even incurred by one of the spouses, those debts, you are also liable for them. So that's basically, so in sickness and in health, in wealth and in poverty, you basically share everything. Yes, so that's the income of property. Again, as I said, you will still also need to make a will just for orderly management of things, even the manner in which the assets would have to be distributed. So that becomes very important. Then the other form of marriage would be your out of community of property, which basically, and there you've got what we call out of community of property with an accrual system or without an accrual system. Now, out of community of property with an accrual system simply means that you would basically get married, and you will actually be bringing stuff. Let's say, for example, I get married to Beulah, and I have got properties already as I get married to her. What I bring into that marriage belongs to me because we are out of community of property. And what she brings into the marriage belongs to her because we married out of community of property. But if we have an accrual system, the accrual system simply means that whatever we accumulate jointly or during the course of our marriage, that basically will then belong to us in equal divisible portions. So it basically almost becomes an in-community of property. So, but if we have an out of community of property without an accrual system, it simply means everyone for himself, God for us all. So whatever I acquire here is mine until death. Whatever she acquires is hers until death, and there is basically no separate. There is no issue there. It becomes even more important in that kind of a setup to actually set out what will happen when one of the spouses passes away. What happens to her assets? Who inherits? In what proportions, etc., etc. So generally, those are the kind of marital forms that you have, and of course, you've got your customary or African traditional marriages. They are also equally recognized in law these days, and therefore you have, in fact, marriages in terms of the Muslim rights. You've got marriages in terms of the African traditions, which recognize even polygamous marriages. And under those circumstances, those unions are actually recognized in law, and the courts have basically said those wives, in fact, are entitled to inherit and to share, equally in terms of the assets in the family setup.
Thank you, Advocate. Thank you very much. You have even touched on another vein that we want to follow theologically. So we now have two issues here. Should a spouse die, is it my right to marry? Or I need to be faithful to the departed and we meet at the resurrection and show him that I remain with the children, we even had the grandchildren. Look at how the family grew when you were gone and what have you. How do we handle that? And then the other question, so you can answer any question that you want. The other one basically is this issue of in community, out of community of property, which is you bring your thing, it's yours, your property is yours, your property is yours. Each one, you stick to your own guns and what have you. There are Christians who believe that it tends to militate against the concept of oneness. If we are one, why should we be separated by property? Can we still be one and yet our property is managed separately? Please answer any question that you are comfortable to answer between the two questions. Dr. Sambo, Ruth, you guys were quiet for a while. Do you want to speak to this? I would appreciate. If you are not ready, let me have Dr. Bonya, Advocate Mukise, coming in there. Those two theological issues. I have met these two questions. Pastor, I cannot marry. Me and my husband, we are meeting at the resurrection. And then the other question, like I'm putting it, is why should we be separated? Why can't we bring everything into oneness? Can we have oneness where we are divided in terms of our property? Please, anybody who's got an answer?
I think I can come in. I don't have an answer, but my thinking is that with regards to property, this is mine, this is his. You know, yes. I think as these things you need to agree from the beginning. You know, yes. As you are dating, you are courting, you need to agree from the beginning, and you have reasons to say, okay, we are marrying out of community or in community of property because of this. You should have the reasons. Because if you are talking about this is his, this is mine. Already here as I am, there are some things which are mine. Like my clothes are my clothes. And there's no issue to say, these clothes, why are you not wearing? Because they are mine. So even the other issues.
Is there someone, sorry, Doc. Is there someone with a phone who is ringing? Please, would appreciate if the phone can be switched off. Thank you.
It's not this side. I also heard the same sound. It's not this side.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to say is, if you agree from the beginning and you have got good reasons, I know those people who have got businesses, they will rather marry out of community because of issues like credits and all those things, so that the other one should not be affected. So if you have good reasons, I think you can go ahead and choose the marriage you would want to. The two.
What I'm hearing you, Doc, say is we can marry out of a community of property to protect family assets. Am I hearing that? So that at least when I have debts at my workplace, in my business, the business will not spill over into my spouse estate or whatever they are having. So whatever you are deciding is on mutual basis, that we are doing this to protect certain interests, not that we don't love one another. Is this what you are saying?
That's right. That's right. You love one another, but you are protecting your assets for your children, right. for your future. Yes.
Right. Please, let's. I appreciate that. Let's go to my other question. I don't know, Ruth, which one do you want to answer between the two questions?
No, I just wanted to add on what Dr. Sambo said. Yes. And just say it's a good thing for a family to have a risk management strategy.
Yes.
It should be developed from a hierarchy that takes into account both financial and non-financial risks. Mm-hmm. So it will be good for a family to sit down and strategize and see the way forward. So that will be a good strategy to protect. Mm-hmm. So it's not necessarily a bad thing in that instance to marry out of community of property, because there's a strategy behind it.
Yes. No, that's beautiful, Ruthie. Dr. Bonya, head on. Should someone court again? Should someone date again? Or people think like, you are not mourning your wife enough, or you are not mourning your husband enough. Why are you falling in love with someone else? What counsel do you give? Should Elizabeth die and at the funeral I see another nice looking woman and I'm weeping, but I'm also looking? Is that bad?
No, that one, we leave it to your conscience. But the Bible says that the dead do not know anything. And that is from the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 5, if I've not mixed my text here. But the dead do not know anything. However, in the deep African context, we think we could teach that people who are dead, they are still living. We talk about the living dead. People are dead, but they're still living. They still monitor, they still control our properties, they still control our lives.
Yes.
And there are some people who are afraid to do anything because they're afraid of the one who has died in case they'll be visited from that premise.
Yeah.
But also Jesus said, when other people ask the question to Jesus, they said, Jesus, tell us, if one has gotten married to several people, one after the other, whose husband or whose wife is this one? Then Jesus said, no, there will be no marriage there. So I don't think that there's any prohibition as far as getting remarried to someone is concerned. I think there's no prohibition about that. However, for your free conscience, you say, I want to live happily. I don't want to have questions about my husband, my wife, whatsoever. When I wake up on the resurrection day, I just want to meet with my husband, with my wife, not even trying to choose many wives or many. That's up to you. But there's no prohibition that says don't get married after your spouse is gone.
You know, a church member came to me the other time and says, Pastor Ngwaru, me, I'm worried, man. Whose wife is going to be, is it Bathsheba? Who is the mother of Solomon, by the way? Uriah's wife was her name?
Right. Yes, Bathsheba.
Bathsheba, yes. You have got David, who wrote the book of Psalms and what have you. You have Uriah Smith, who died a faithful soldier, and both men are in heaven, but they have one wife, both of them. Where is Bathsheba going to go? And you know, these kind of questions, issues of belief, issues of theology, sometimes for the Christian faith, they complicate life.
So true.
Yeah, yes. Now, we are winding up. Now, before you give your final statement each, I want to find out, we've been talking for almost an hour and 20 minutes. We've been talking about planning for death as far as this world is concerned. In a nutshell, is it important to die in Christ, to die in your faith, and to make sure that your house is in order? Should I fall off from the aeroplane? Should I plunge in the sea and I'm eaten by dolphins and sharks? And should I be shot by soldiers and I'm gone? Is there comfort in knowing I put my house in order spiritually? Is it important to have that spiritual preparation? Maybe just one line. Let me allow any two of you to speak to this, and then we can wind up the program. Spiritual preparation and the death. We've been talking about preparing for life, for the life of the family that remains. What about for the hereafter? Is it important to make sure my house is in order? I don't know. Any two of you?
Yeah, if I can just come in and say, I mean, just on the previous question, Pastor, very briefly. I mean, the issue around the community of property. Some people, the out of community of property must remain a structural issue, but not a heart issue. What do I mean by that? It's a structural issue because it is a form of marriage which is basically designed to address a particular risk management strategy in terms of business, etc., 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 etc. But those things that we have actually separated in that way do not make us to be separate entities under one roof. We are still one.
Yes.
We are still one, even though we have structured our assets and properties and issues in that particular way as a risk mitigation issue. My wife has equal access to that which is written under my name, just as I have equal access to that which is written under her name. It is just for convenience, for structural, this world's kind of arrangements. So I just thought that's very important, because sometimes it gets confused, and in the Christian context, we cannot actually have two kings, under one roof. We are all meshed. We are basically one. Now, to the last aspect, in terms of how we deal with the aspect of information and sharing the information, it's important that we remain true to our calling, because our calling is not just about to leave the wills in terms of the assets and properties and all of those kind of issues. The greatest will we can leave is a character that will resurrect to see the Christ when he comes. And that's the greatest will. It is the greatest investment we can make whilst we're still alive, is the investment of our lives in Jesus. So that even when we die, we may actually have the life eternal. When Christ comes, we will be able to see him and resurrect to see him. But more importantly, to Pastor Bonya's point, it is about leaving a legacy that our children can look up and say, well, this is the kind of life that we want to live. And the society at large can say, well, this is the kind of legacy we also want to live. And when we have done that, we will have truly lived.
Okay, I really appreciate that. In just one line, I noticed Nathaniel and Elizabeth throw in last questions there, and this will be the last questions for the night. Is there any government assistance that can be given to families that did not make any wills and they are going through hardship? And then Elizabeth says, should a husband kill the wife, or the wife kills the husband, murders in terms of murder, are you entitled to any estate of the deceased because you actually murdered them? Maybe there was an intention, we don't know. In just one line, what are you saying? And then after that, we wind up the program.
Quickly, you can't benefit from your own wrongdoing. So if you have killed, you are not entitled by law to inherit.
Okay,
so you can't. Yeah.
Yes. Any assistance from government for people that did not have a will?
No, government will not assist except in the instance where there is a dispute that lands in the court. And that's the one aspect, and then the courts will then make a determination and if there's a dispute. But secondly, the only assistance that you can find is where, if there is no will, there is what we call the master of the High Court. The master basically deals with the equitable distribution of the estate. He does the winding up of the estate, and then would call for beneficiaries. And those beneficiaries would be the children and the surviving children, etc., etc. And this is why sometimes you will see in the back part of the newspapers, there are adverts that are made out there so that whoever has got a claim into that particular estate can then come forward. So that's the only kind of assistance government can do. And then the master of the High Court, or the wind as an executor of the estate, is the one who then says, well, there was no will, but this is what will happen in terms of interstate succession. That is someone dying without a will.
Okay. No, I really appreciate that. Gentlemen and ladies, I am very, very much thankful of your contribution to society. This is a channel where we try to empower community and where we try to be responsible citizens who live better, who plan better. And I'm sure some people out there benefited quite a lot. And then in one line, I mean exactly one line, what is your take-home message, Dr. Sambo, to the listeners that you think, please, if you fail to understand anything else or if you forget everything but remember this, what would be that in one line?
Yeah, I think I can say since our father fell, Adam and Eve, since they sinned in the
Yes.
Garden of Eden, death
Yes.
and grief is inevitable. So whether
Yes.
we're going to talk about it or not, it will still
Yeah.
happen.
It
So
will still
as we're
happen.
waiting for the second coming of Jesus Christ, we need to ask ourselves, have we prepared for our death? What legacy are we leaving for our children or for our loved ones? What
Yes.
values are we instilling in our children as they live in this life? May God help us as we also forge, looking forward to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Appreciate that. I would like to say amen. If I were a church, I would say amen to that. Thank you, my sister. Dr. Bonya, something that you think, if you miss everything else but remember this, what would be that?
I'll remember what the Apostle Paul said to Timothy, young Timothy, 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, he says, to those who believe, the one who does not prepare for his family, who does not take care of his family, he's worse than an infidel, than an unbeliever. And this message goes to those who are Christian believers.
No, you couldn't. You can write a book on that, I'm sure. I appreciate that. We started with a woman. We are going to end with a woman. So let's go to advocate. Something, take home message, something that you don't want people to forget about this discussion.
For me, more than just leaving a will that deals with proprietary arrangements, what is even more important is the legacy that you leave. It may not be in the form of monuments. It may not be in the form of big riches and wealth and big checks, but it is about the kind of impact that you would have left in the manner in which you have touched humanity, in the manner in which you have touched society. And that should be our greatest challenge, how we impact life, how we impact humanity.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm listening to that with both ears. It's like you're speaking to me as well. Every one of you are speaking. I don't know if others have not benefited. I've benefited a lot from this discussion. Ruthie, there are people who die prematurely, my daughter. People die prematurely there, and they want to attribute that, no, his time had come there, whatever. What message from risk management point of view you would like to leave with our viewers tonight as we sign up?
I can say you can't avoid death, but you can do a lot of things to increase your chances for a long and healthy life. Everything in life has got risks. And the art of living a good life is to be clear as to when risks are worth taking. As I mentioned earlier, God has foreknowledge, but did not predestine anyone to die in a certain way. So let's be risk controllers in everything. Our day-to-day lives, everything we do, we must assess.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you. Are you done?
Yes.
No, thanks a lot. Friends out there, when you're driving your car, drive to remain alive. When you're eating, eat for health. And when you are going out on an errand, don't go during dangerous times. And please do everything that it takes to preserve the life you have, because your family needs it. Thank you, Ruth, for that. And my panelists, every one of you, thank you very much. And our viewers out there, thank you for hanging around. Thank you for going through the whole way in this particular program. But let me remind you that we have a vision. Our vision in this particular program or channel is to actually make this channel a channel of choice when it comes to human development. We are here to learn. We are not here to embarrass one another, but we are here not to conflict, but we are here to find out how your family can do better, how your life can do better, how you can leave a legacy behind, like others have said, how you can plan your life and live your life to the best. This is exactly why this channel is here. And to help us grow this channel and make it bigger, if you have not yet subscribed and you are a listener, you are following us and you have not yet subscribed, please, on our YouTube, we want to plead with you. Let's Talk with Pastor Ngwaru. Subscribe and click notification. You can also follow us and like our Facebook page, Let's Talk with Pastor Ngwaru. This is the kind of support. You see, our panelists who come, they are giving something. You can also give just that thumbs up, and also subscribing will go a long way to make this channel bigger and greater. Together, we can make things happen. Good night, and God bless you all. Wherever you are in Mutare, Lilongwe, in the United States of America, Canada, if you are also in Australia, I don't know where you are. Thank you for being part of the program. Good night, and God bless you. Thank you. Thank you once again, our panelists. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.